A big victory for Silicon Valley. The U.S. Supreme Court sided with social media websites in two rulings today, saying they were not liable for terrorist attacks. The justices unanimously rejected two lawsuits stemming from separate attacks in 2015 and 2017. The decisions protect social media companies from being sued over user-posted content regarding certain terror-related speech. Correspondent Joe Khalil is live in Washington. And Joe, this is a blow to the families of victims in these terrorist attacks who say these platforms should be held accountable.
Yeah, it was disappointing for them, certainly, Elizabeth. It was a really important ruling. I want to throw a hypothetical your way. So let's say that ISIS radicalizes and recruits somebody using YouTube and Twitter to commit a terrorist attack, and they do, and they end up killing people. Well, today the Supreme Court ruled that the families of those victims who died can sue ISIS, but cannot sue YouTube or Google or Facebook or Twitter because those platforms didn't have a direct role in the attacks themselves. And again, as you mentioned, that was the principle that came down in two rulings, two different cases, both very similar. One was brought forth by a young Jordanian family, a 17-year-old man who was killed in Turkey back in 2017 from an ISIS attack, and another American family, their daughter, 15 in 2015, was killed in an ISIS attack in Paris. So the Supreme Court essentially saying that those families' argument went too far. The families were hoping to hold these social media companies liable because they said that not only were they aware groups like ISIS were using their platforms to recruit, but that those terrorist organizations were also actually profiting from those videos, from those terrorist groups. Ultimately, they were ruled against. And I want to put up what Justice Clarence Thomas said, who wrote the opinion here. It was a 9-0 anonymous opinion. He says, "We conclude the plaintiff's allegations are insufficient to establish these defendants aided and abetted ISIS in carrying out the relevant attack. A defendant must have aided and abetted knowingly providing assistance in the commission of the actionable wrong, here an act of international terrorism." If the justices had ruled the other way, Elizabeth, there would have been huge implications for how social media platforms operate on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Social media platforms are all protected by Section 230, which says, we're not responsible for what anybody says on our site. And the court notably steered very clear of any talk on Section 230. They're kicking that can down the road.
Yeah, and there were some who expected that maybe the court would weigh in specifically on the law that you referenced, Section 230, which right now does protect social media platforms from what their users post. But what that does essentially is put the ball in Congress's court now. There's been a lot of talk over the last few years from both sides of the aisle to do something about 230 and change the law, amend it in some way. We'll see if this decision gets that ball rolling. Elizabeth.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Joe.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.